Hello and welcome to happy to be the end of playing Southern Entry. Welcome to the Author Center. My name is Chris Stern and I represent the Friends of the Author Center. We are a volunteer organization whose mission promotes writing and writers on the institution ground and beyond, by both supporting and supplementing the activities of the Chicago Letters Center. Today we're going to be using handheld mics because the new Bluetooth mic does not fit the old mic stand. We sponsor several events every week. I think I still do Tuesday. On Sundays at 5 o'clock in the closed room on the second floor near the elevator. On the second floor of the building, writers and listeners is in the home and favor. Are you all liberating? They're all eligible. To participate in an open mic session on whether the casting on microphone, but that should be up to 5 minutes at this work. This Friday and every Friday at 1:15 in the garden room on the first floor of this building, we offer the informal critique session. Letters and writers who bring in 10 copies in 1 day of their prose for poetry, or quick feedback cited what would like to get out done, John Franking down. He's a professional writer, and he's has the writers from the licensing and for free. Today, as part of the Authors Hour Vision Space, refers every Tuesday to Chicago Letters participants at work. After the first presenter panel will tell you about this special annual event. By the way, as you can probably tell, books will be for sale. And we should have time for a short Q&A at the end of the day. First speaker is Maureen Ryan Griffin. Maureen has 12 words and stories since her child in the house. She leads writing workshops and retreats through her business, wordplay now.com. In addition to publication of numerous literary journals and feature publications, the book recently appeared in anthologies Chicken Soup to the Soul, or from Heaven, and Foolhardy, personal stories about grand giving inspiration and development. Her books and pieces of her poetry, Fantastic Cicadas, and Beyond, which is there, and singing words into bowls, which is writing, which is nothing about. She also wrote How Do I Say Goodbye? The End and Beat. Karen has been gratitude precious that he was starlight, but she wasn't working with him.
I need to drop something. I'm so glad to be here with you, and thank you for coming on this very hot day. I thought a lot about what I wanted to give you as a gift, as you're here. Your presence is my gift, and what might be useful to you or inspiring to you in some kind of way. And I was so taken by the theme we have this week of great challenges and great transformation. And it reminded me of a little piece by Maureen. I always like to read something that somebody else wrote, because I would not be a writer without all the writers I read and heard. This is a little piece called This Is How a Human Being Can Change. There's a worm addicted to eating grapes. Suddenly he wakes up. How is great? Whatever. Something wakes him. And he's no longer a worm. He's the entire vineyard. And the orchard, too. The fruit. The trunk. Of growing wisdom and joy.
two people.
He was a 12th century poet and sufistic. I love it very much. And I thought that I would read an essay. I haven't published a book of essays yet. That's on my short list to be working on. But I have some essays in my writing book, Fitting Words and Told. And I am going to read one of these. I actually mentioned it thanks to my students who are here today. So I mentioned this essay yesterday in class because I deliberately inserted a question there and took out something didactic I was saying to give the reader the pleasure of answering the question if they knew it and becoming engaged with me. And I'm a big believer in bringing curiosity to everything. To get to fear, I think, at least one of mine. So this is called Flying Machine. And I wrote this a little bit after September 11th. So I was at a whole different life stage then. But I have been thinking so much about how this time we're living in now has some parallels to what was happening back then. Flying Machine. We're anxiously looking forward to your visit, read my dad's letter, followed by when. I promised months before I'd fly up to Erie, Pennsylvania to see him and my mother, but ever since September 11th, I couldn't bring myself to get on an airplane. It was now February, and I was still putting it off. It took a phone call from my father with the same insistent when to get me to the scary finality of tapping the enter key on my computer to purchase a ticket. I booked a flight for 3 days later, so I wouldn't have to sit long with my fear. Driving to Charlotte Douglas Airport, I couldn't stop thinking about the emails from friends I hadn't answered, the phone calls I'd been meaning to return, and about the fact that I have no cell phone. If anything did happen, my last words to my husband, son, and daughter had already been spoken. I could hear my 15-year-old daughter saying that tone just short of total exasperation that so frequently creeps into her voice these days. Mom, nothing is going to happen. The truth is, I've always been afraid to fly, but that fear was tempered by excitement and by the aura of glamour that flying held for me. There was nothing glamorous about having to take my shoes off at the security checkpoint at the airport, turn my belt buckle inside out and away from my body. As I endured a spread eagle position, arms straight out, so that a grim-faced woman could wave her wand over every inch of my body, I remember previous moments at this airport, waving goodbye to my daughter at the runway as she left the carriage, greeting my husband at the gate after a business trip, sitting with a friend having a marvelous conversation as he waited to board his flight back to New York. Such taken for granted small pleasures. Never again. Walking from the security checkpoint to my concourse, I paused by kinetic sculptor George Greenemeyer's whimsical three-tiered mobile, first in flight. The last time I'd been here at Charlotte Douglas Airport, sometime well before September 11, my son and I, after seeing my brother off, had stood for the longest time, enjoying this 3D history of aviation. So much had been lost since then, including the wonder my son and I had felt as we watched these testaments to the beauty of flight circle. Models of flying machines from Icarus to the Wright brothers' 1903 Flyer, from the first hot air balloon flown by Montgolfier brothers near Paris in 1783 to the space shuttle. Punctuating my sad reverie was the fact that man was matter-of-factly cleaning the sculpture with goop on. How could life be this mundane when so much has been taken from all of us? Round and round the flying machine went. I couldn't tear my eyes away from them. Seeing the smiling boy standing atop a paper airplane, I mourned our collective loss of innocence. The Graf Zeppelin had me lamenting the twisted use of what is so wonderful about human beings, our imagination, our ingenuity. It took the double winger used in World War I to jolt me into remembering that flying machines had been used for destructive purposes before. it that said, there is no new thing under the sun? Oh, yes, that's in the book of a pronunciation. Sorry, I'm not even going to try to say it. I thought we fall out. Believed to have been written about 3 centuries before Christ. Human beings were dying and killing each other in ingenious ways, even then. Had I really been thinking that violence and fear and lost innocence exploded into life on September 11th? The real issue is, how will we be in the face of it? Icarus died too, the wax that held his feathered wings melting in time. But he died looking ahead, not back. I thought of my dad, who would be waiting for me at the end of his flight. Outside the security checkpoint, true, but he'd be there. I took one last look at those amazing flying machines, then turned and walked toward my gate, toward you. One of the things I'm really interested in as a person and a writing teacher is how writing can be helpful in the healing process. And after I lost my mom, and hiding your way in the back, ahoy! After I lost my mom, I put together a grief ritual that led me through Elizabeth Kubler-Ross stages and some other stages as well, including gratitude. And I have a poem that I wrote for her when I had not been living away from home very long. And I had a mother who struggled with some mental illness, and she could be the most wonderful mother, and sometimes she was not such a wonderful mother. Probably describes all of us, which I didn't have the wisdom to realize at the time. This is called When the Leaves Are in the Water. When my brother and I walked through these woods, he pointed out subtleties of bark and branches, red growth rings, spoke of drought and rain years. Said I looked like mother. What I love about trees, they endure the seasons. I yearn to be sweet gum, sugar maple. My brother named me ironwood, divined my rusting heart, too hard to yield forgiveness. Would we agree on oak, my gallnut's early grief, painstakingly transformed? Arriving at the creek bank, I let silt run through my fingers, minute bits of pebbles, unseen roughness. I wasn't looking when my hands turned into the bird. I plunged them into cold creek water. I once thought forgiving her was pain, balsam on a wound to make it heal. It's more like washing hands for a meal. I have to do it over and over. Forgiveness to the third power. I feel it's time, but loss spirals deeper each succeeding season. What will I be without my holy anger? Stripped bare like the skeleton of a tree. My stipple scars, my leaf scars showing. Trees are born to nakedness. I'm not ready. My brother told me the Cherokee believe it's a time of great power when the leaves are in water. I fling in handfuls of hard memories, watch the current carry them. Thank you. Being, oh, no, no, that's I thought since I was reading that hard poem about my mom, I would read another one I wrote from my poetry book, 10,000 Cicadas Can't Be Wrong. And my mother was a great saver, and so I ended up receiving this box of clothes for her when I had a daughter. All these clothes that I wore when I was a little girl, and they brought back some memories. So I have two of these little companion poems. Clothing is a really wonderful thing to write about. If you've never done that, made a list of clothing that you associate with yourself at different times of your life or people that you love, it's really rich. I was surprised at how many clothing memories I ended up having. For Mother, as I sort through this box of clothes you saved for a granddaughter, I remember sitting in the tub, you washing my hair, a halo around your head where light met the steam. I was telling you how much I loved being 8, that I wanted to be 8 forever. And then I was 9 and so happy to be 9. I wanted that age to last forever too. Then 10. The years clicking by like Hail Marys on your rosary beads, till I would want nothing more than to leave you. But that year, my 8th, you bought me this striped pink and white dress with a whale applique on it. I remember wanting to cry. I remember wanting to cry when I tried it on the next summer and it no longer fit. So I didn't say a word. You came home one day carrying an identical dress in the next larger size, proving something about love I've never found words to thank you for. Oh my goodness. So I'm thinking through what I most want to share with you. And I think I do have to just tell you, and Fred may be mentioning that there's a community poem that we can write, and that the line that we're supposed to include if you want to write a community poem, and he'll say more about that. A little bit. It's tell me, what do you plan to do? And I just Kwame Alexander was talking about that, and he didn't attribute that to anybody, and maybe he came up with that himself. But I just wanted to tell you that I have that poem, Infinite Words and Scroll, that was a great delight for me to include. Ray Bradbury, who wrote me back a wonderful little note, and I had poets, people who were writing pieces in my classes, along with these well-known people. It was just really wonderful to put the book together. And the Mary Oliver poem that line is from is called "A Summer Day," and I won't read the whole thing to you, but I did want to read you the last 2 lines, which are, tell me, what is it you claim to do with your one wild and precious life? Which is probably the best question I have ever encountered, because when I get in certain moods, if I think of that question, it will just snap me up to, well, whatever it isn't crying over that, it isn't being angry about this. So I just wanted to give that to you as a little gift. And then I think I will go ahead and finish with a poem that I actually wrote for a student of mine who had just been really stuck and abandoned a story. And I really wanted to encourage her. And how many of you are writers? How many of you here are writers or want to be writers, or, right? So I figured that this might maybe give you a different way to think about that. It's called "Why You Can Go Back to a Story You Abandoned Years Ago and Finally Finish It." Because a field that's been fallow yields a better crop. Because seeds have germination periods. Because some cicadas need 17 years. Because we need darkness to see the light, and so do our stories. Because we have some living to do first, to become who we needed to be to write our story. Because we grow into the stories that are ours to tell. Because the thing we need to include to make our story what it needs to be hasn't happened yet. Because we need it to practice. Because our stories are patient, our stories are kind, our stories keep no record of wrongs nor count the number of times we have abandoned them. Because our stories seek only to serve us and the people who need them. Because some births are harder and more painful than others. Because labor is called labor for a reason. Because we say yes to a labor of love, to birthing a story when we are ready and not. Because we can come to see that a story is often too polite to say, ready or not, here I come. But will come if you call that it is time for supper. Because a story loves to be sung.
Do so much. A beautiful combination of showing us about writing a little bit, but showing us so much more with you. Mary Chapin's cousin is going to be your leader in the season. Do you know her song, His Shirt? Yeah. You should listen to it. It's when you came to the shirt she's on leader. Let me just say a few things about the annual special event that the Friends sponsor. First up is the Authors Among Us book fair, which will be held Sunday, July 13th from 11:30 to 2 o'clock on Bedford Plaza. I think we have about 6 authors signed up so far. There's room for more if you're a public author. Go to our webpage. I'll say this a few times when I get off. q.org/FBWC for the Chicago Writers Center. The annual writing contest for writers of fall closes on July 27th. You can find out more about the rules and how to submit your work at www.org/FBWC. On August 10th at 2:30, we'll have the awards ceremony and the spot date for that contest. On August 4th, also in the Hall of Rockland, we'll have the annual Robert P. Favorite Home Project at 5 o'clock. At this gathering, selected Chicagoans read their favorite poem and briefly explain why it means so much to them. And the applications to that can be found at the q.org/FBWC. A reminder, we will have a short Q&A at the end of this, so our second speaker is Sabeeha Rehman. Sabeeha, author, podcaster, blogger, and speaker on the American Muslim experience, is best known for her memoir, but in October, which is also co-authored with daughter Ruby. He was the editing from Muslim spaces to make peace better, one friendship at a time, especially relevant to violence in place. And they co-host a podcast with the same title. In 2020, she published her third book, It's Not What You Think, An American in Saudi Arabia. Her writings have been published in the Wall Street Journal, Newsweek, New York Daily News, Forward, the Baltimore Sun, the Washington Jewish Week, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Axios.com. We also have a website you can check out, www.sabeeha.com. I might be pronouncing it.com. Sabeeha.
Thank you, Fred. Maureen, that is beautiful. Thank you all for braving it on very, very hot day. Can you hear me? Okay. If my voice drops, just raise your hand and I'll make sure to remember. The first time I met my husband was on my wedding night. It was love at first sight. I read from the first chapter of my book called It's Arranged. November 1971, Rawalpindi, Pakistan. You are getting married, Mummy announced. I was at college, in between my postgraduate English literature classes, hanging out with my friends. Mummy had tracked me down. Your fiancé has arrived from New York, she informed. He has to return to America in 2 weeks, so you're taking off. Let's go. I have to take you to the tailor to have your wedding outfit stitched. I had gotten engaged a few weeks ago. A wedding date had not been talked about, but it seemed like it was in the distant future. But now he had come to Pakistan, all the way from New York, so I had to get back. And that is it. Oh my God, so I get into the car and my mom's driving me to the tailor and I'm wondering, what is it like when I see him for the first time? What is his voice going to sound like? And oh, please, God, make him taller than me in high heels. It all started when my prospective future mother-in-law came to visit my parents, to propose for her son's hand in marriage, who was a doctor in America. They settled in the sunroom, and I noticed that Auntie, at that time I called her Auntie, had a yellow envelope in her hand. And I said, that must have the photographs of the two little boys. I served some tea and I withdrew into my bedroom. I was not supposed to be a party to this conversation. I'm not supposed to know what's going on. And even though everybody knew that I knew what's going on, I'm not supposed to know what's going on. And after a while, my mother walked in and said, this is Khalil. And she showed me his photograph. All I could tell was that he was a very good man. And of course, I was partial to the name Khalil. And that was it. So, things moved on. And that evening, the arranged marriages in Pakistan are everybody's way. So everybody convened. My parents, my grandparents, my cousins, my uncles, my aunts, close friends, friends of friends, you name it. That evening, the extended family convened again and had the light of a roundtable meeting. The agenda: to accept or not accept the marriage proposal. He is a doctor. Plus, New York is too far away. Mind, the grandparents know the family very well. Plus, they say he has a very good temperament, is very responsible, is very caring. Plus, but we haven't seen him. Mind, what if he settles in America and does not return to Pakistan? Huge mind. No one has seen him since he went to America over 2 years ago. Has America changed him? Well, minor. And where was I in all these discussions? Right in the middle. Listening, but also listening to my inner voice. Khalid's proposal said, how irrational is that? I just had a feeling that this proposal was right for me. But I said nothing. I had not learned to trust my instincts, and I respected my parents' apprehension. So things moved on, and I detailed that story in the book as to how things moved, how the vetting and background checks were done, how the decision was made, that he's the one, and then, of course, the wedding, and all the details and beautiful photos in my book. So, we get married, I fly back to New York, and we land at JFK Airport on a cold, windy, blustery, snowy December morning, and life never looked so wrong. I was in love. When we went to our apartment, my newly minted husband took me for a loop. He made dinner. Now, understand that in Pakistan, in those days, the kitchen was a no man's land. This was the woman's doing. And as I watched my Prince Charming gently peeling the onions, I just fell in love with him all over again. The next morning, he told me he had to go to work. And I had written letters to my parents to let them know that we arrived safely. These were the days when we didn't have WhatsApp or phone calls or what have you. So he said, get some cash and you can mail these letters to the post office. Just step out of the building, make a right, then make a left, then two left, and then right, and then there's the post office. You won't. Okay. I get there. I put on my shimmering, shiny, the jeweled outfit, my gold dangling earrings, my golden bracelet, my gold choker, my golden pumps, and my golden pocketbook, and I walked out into the street of Jamaica in 1970. So as I'm walking down the street, I am shocked at the poverty. Americans are so poor. They're walking around in tattered jeans and gaping holes. My goodness. I walk into the post office, and now I'm trying to make change. And he's saying, give me the nickel, give me the dime, and I can't figure out why a 5-cent coin is larger than a 10-cent coin. And then I walk into the store, and this nice old gentleman says to me, you must be new. How do you know that? He said, young lady, I wouldn't walk around the streets of New York dressed like that. Why not? You're going to get mugged. I don't know how I ran home in shoes which were not meant for running, and when my husband comes home in the evening, I say to him, why didn't you tell me? You know you get all dressed up in shoes. I said, but in Pakistan, young guys get dressed up in shoes and go out on the street. He said, honey, this is not possible. Anyhow, life moved on, and over the years, I drifted away from the faith. I was raised Muslim, but there was no Muslim community. The environment wasn't there. When I would try to say my prayers and go down in prostration, little toddler started to come and sit on my head. Ramadan came and went year after year, and I just let it get by because the community. But then my two young boys started growing up, and now I'm worried. Will they lose their Muslim faith? So, I didn't know what to do. I had gone to a convent for my schooling. I would start the day with a Lord's Prayer. I knew nothing about Islam. It's Muslim, but that was the extent of it. So I went looking for books, and I went to the bookstore, and I wandered into the children's section, and I picked up a book called Stories from the Bible. And when I browsed through it, it had the stories of all the prophets who my grandfather would have told me about. Abraham, Moses, Joseph, Jacob. Only Prophet Muhammad was living on him, and I figured I'd do it. So I brought it home, and I would sit down with the pocket on the sofa every day, reading the book, the stories from the Bible. We needed a community. They needed a community they could belong. So what did we do? My husband and I pulled out the yellow pages. Anybody knows what I'm talking about? Yes. And started looking for Muslim names in the white pages and calling them and saying, hi, we live in Staten Island. We are also Muslims. Would you like to get together? Yeah. Two new, two more. And we had a critical mass enough to have a party, and we started partying in our home. So that's what they needed a Sunday school. There were no teachers. What do we do? So there's a whole story behind that, and but we parents decided to become teachers. We ignorant parents decided to become teachers. When telling people coming from Pakistan, can you please bring elementary Islam book for us? And then we tried to stay just one step ahead of our children because they were asking questions that we never asked when we were growing up. and those who do the crime. They made a mosque that they can call those mosques. So there is a huge problem. Muslims are not allowed to take interest. Now we all had mortgages, we were breaking the rules, but mosques are sacred. Cannot take a loan. So what did we do? Fundraising until people stopped the street every time they ran into us. And eventually, there's a whole story behind that also in the book. We were able to figure out. The issue we dealt with was about assimilation. To what extent would we assimilate without giving up some of the rich cultural traditions that we brought with us from the old country? So, for example, on the occasion of Eid following end of Ramadan, do we take the day off? What if my husband has patient work? What if the children have an exam that day? What if I have a work meeting? Will my children have an arranged marriage like mom and dad? We are Americans. And do I give them a Christmas tree? And then the whole chapter is devoted to the Christmas. Meanwhile, Mommy was becoming American dictator. How many do you think?
You have about 8 minutes.
Okay. The Americanization of your story. Would you like something to drink? Here is how it goes in Pakistan. You go visiting. It could be anything. Family, friends, strangers. You are immediately served with drink, juice or soda. The host never asks you if you would like to drink. It is a given that you will be served a drink. And this is later the host will leave the trolley in and you are served tea or mithai or cake and some kebabs and samosa and some fruit chop. Again, the host will ask you if you want some. Have some cake. The host says, no, thank you. You have to say no, thank you, or you will appear to disagree. Oh, please do have some. The host will say, no, I'm hungry. Oh, well. Oh, I can sit. Please have some. Okay, if you will. Then and only then will you take a small piece of helper. Some more. Take another kebab. No, one is fine. Just one more, and she puts the kebab in your food. Once you're done eating, she insists that you have seconds, and the back and forth starts all over again. Here is what happened in New York in 1971. I paid my first visit to an American friend. Would you like something to drink? The host said. No, thank you. Okay. That was it. Not even on afternoon thinking, I'm going visiting, surely she'll be serving me tea and snack, and I don't want to end up overeating. I was also thirsty. Now what? I couldn't backtrack, but some is done. She had asked me an honest question, and I had given her a not so honest, but Pakistani culturally appropriate answer. And got what I asked for. I said, hungry and thirsty, feeling rather stupid. But I learned best. Here is what happened in New York in 2016. Some friends from Pakistan were in town, and we met over coffee at a cafe. Later, we walked over to my apartment, and I asked them, would you like something to drink? No, thank you, they said. Okay. I was Along the way, my husband and I got involved in the dialogue because we did not want our children to come home from school and say, Mommy, why are my classmates calling me a terrorist? We felt that we had to do our job to make our sons better known. And in doing so, America opened doors. We were invited to every forum. We had churches, synagogues, libraries, houses of worship, the hospital where my husband worked allowed him to say the Muslim prayer on Fridays. The local newspaper gave him space in the monthly column over there to write on Islam, America, and what we focused on in our interfaith dialogue with our family. Then the boys grew up. The question was, will they have an arranged marriage? Well, I didn't arrange my older son's marriage. I engineered it. And have a chapter in my book devoted to that. And if you recall sitting around the group, my younger son did it great, and I love my daughter as well. And then something that changed the trajectory of my life. Omar, my 8-year-old grandson, was visiting. Omar has autism. This was 2010. They were getting on a flight to go to Disney World when Omar got taken aside at the airport and was placed in a holding area. I was at the office when I got a text from Sabeeha, my daughter-in-law. Omar has been detained. They say his name is on the no-fly list of terrorists. Can they see that he's 8 years old? I texted. They say they know that he could be a terrorist, but they have to follow procedure. Which is what? They have to put his name in the database, and if no match, he will be cleared. How long will it take? A few hours. We will definitely miss our class. Where are you? In a holding area, all 4 of us. The 4 being mom and dad and 2 children. Hanging there. I'm calling the press. I was president of the National Autism Association New York Metro chapter and had contacts in the media. I got going and got the word out to my autism network, which was huge. The Age of Autism immediately posted the news online. 8-year-old with autism on terror list detained at airport. The New York Times revealed they had done a similar story recently and were not interested. Another text from Sabeeha. He is hungry and they won't let any of us go out to bring him something to eat. He is stimming. Stimming is when a person with autism engages in self-stimulatory repetitive behavior, such as hands clapping, talking, and play. My grandson is autism. And this is 8-year-old. Hungry, thin, and entertaining. Has our nation gone crazy? Let's just set aside that he's only 8. Don't they know that Sabeeha Rehman is as ubiquitous a name among Muslims as John Smith and David Cohen are among Christians and Jews? God help the Sabeeha Rehman of America. I called my assemblyman. He's 8 years old with autism and they're treating him like a terrorist. The assemblyman was in New York. The airport was in Cicadas. I got a question to speak, but he was not able. A text from Sabeeha. They have cleared him for terrorist in his 20s. No match. Duh. My dear little friend, he couldn't do a thing to help me. I made a lot of noise, continued to make noise. Autism moms backed me up, and the autism community made a big splash over it with these students. Umar is now 14, but now he's 22. A handsome young boy. What is going to happen to him the next time he gets children? And that's when my husband said to me, you need to write a book. You need to tell your stories of being Muslim in America, of what Islam is, in a story format to reach people that we cannot reach in our community. And so I wrote that in my prayer book, because I want the people to know that the heart and soul of a Muslim mother is like that of a baby. And that Islam does not have things. Misguided people, that Islam does not identify. Misguidance. We have the same dream. We have the same spirit, the same values, the same drive. And that Islamic values are compatible with the American values of life, liberty, and the happiness. So I would ask you that next time you go visiting, instead of taking a cake or a bite to your food, consider giving them a copy of this book. It's non-perishable, long shelf life, and a pretty cover. Thank you so much.
Interesting thread. We have a little time for Q&A. Somebody has questions for either or them. I don't know. Yeah. The question is about how do I call it for something going to be die something on this individual.
First of all, I am so very sorry that you are going through this now. My mom had Lewy body dementia in her life, so I really do understand very well what that feels like. And I think the thing that helped me the most in that time was noting that the place I wanted to be was in her world, whatever that was like. And I don't know at what stage of consciousness, I know, there are so many different places you can be, but I love to tell her stories about my mother. She didn't always remember that I was her daughter. She always knew I was someone who loved her. And so I would just tell her stories about my mother, and she would just love them, all the happy memories I had. And it was so special. And then once in a while she would say, "You're pulling my leg." And I would say, "Yeah, because you know you're my mom." And it brought a certain level of sweetness to it. The other thing that I did in my family, and I didn't bring a copy of this with me because it's not, it wasn't something I published, but I created my mother loved her, so I created a book of memories and recipes, and I invited all my siblings to tell me their happy memories, and just created these happy memories, and especially because my mother did have some issues that when we were young, but anyway, and so having everybody think about the happy memories and share them was just a really wonderful experience for our family. So I hope that helps a little bit. And the book is here. Yes, we can talk more too. Thanks.
First of all, I love his story. But how much do you publish before season on?
The question is how much is publishing the book changed your life? And since we don't have a STEM kind of we have this question here.
It was a huge change in my life because in doing book tours, it took me to places I never would have ventured on my own. People would invite us, and through word of mouth, word got out, got to travel, got to make friends for life. But even in writing the book, it changed my life because looking back, I was able to let go of some of the grudges I had, of some of the anger I felt, and reconcile myself with the loss that I couldn't at that young age, but I could when I sat and wrote. But it also, the book also gave me the confidence to continue writing, and I started blogging about current events and doing that of this conventions in America, and then, of course, publishing 2 more books. It gave me a foothold in the publishing industry as well as the confidence to keep writing and skills. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
What my husband Khalid and I are doing in Chautauqua are daily lectures on Islam 101. We've been doing these since 2016, and each day we have a different topic. So Monday is Quran and what it says about other faiths. Tuesday is family life and women. Wednesday is Shia Sunni divide and other sects in Islam. Thursday is Sharia, and Friday is Islam in America and an American University. It's at 3:30 every day at the Purple Church. We devote a significant amount of time to Q&A, and we will be repeating this curriculum day for more than 1 week, Thank you.
We have time for one more question, if anyone has a question. Yes, you guys, you look familiar. The question is to expand upon writing as a way of dealing with the most and anger.
Thank you for the question. Dealing with grief was a little harder than dealing with anger because I had lost both my parents by the time I wrote this book, and I regretted not having written it in their lifetime. It would have made them, happily proud of me, be able to act on input, and all I could do was just to them. So that part was harsh. But then I was writing about my parents and those who had passed away. During that writing period, I was proud to stop writing. My husband was walking the room and he was there and weeping, but it was cathartic to be able to do it, especially for those who had passed away a long time ago, like my parents and my husband. Anger, I was able to put. And also I felt myself being more tolerant. It's probably its age, but I have held some grudge and some anger of incidents that took place when I was young. But then when I started thinking about it, I was able to speak with you. I was able to put myself in the shoes of that person. I was able to understand where they were coming from, and I lacked that capacity when I was young. So I'm glad that I relived those memories at this age so that I could put those hard feelings to rest and actually embrace those people for possible. It was a very useful exercise in gratitude.
Thank you so much. That's a great question. And it made me remember that in my grief rituals, I have an appendix with a whole list of the healing benefits of writing. And I'm not going to read them all to you, but I will read you one that I found was really special. This is from Sadie F. Dingfelder, Our Stories Ourselves, which was an article in Monitoring Psychology. Every story is a gift, a little part of yourself that you share with the audience. And who doesn't like a gift? And what I have found is that in writing those very hard emotions that I didn't like feeling, resentment and anger and fear, that it gave myself a chance to expunge them in a certain way, to own them and feel them and be able to move on to the next thing, which I found very helpful. And it also broadened my community so much because when I started sharing my resentments and angers and hurt, then other people felt free to share theirs. And my relationships are very rich with people where we can really talk about what's going on inside us in a very special way. And I found that I've had so many people tell me that things I've written working through my grief or expressing it were a very big comfort or help to them, and they did that. And that has been so much to me in that way as well.
Thank you. Let's give a round of applause to Sabeeha. I'd like to finish with a few reminders. On Thursday, as you produced, the author of the CLS was spoken to the science that speaks about the science of the news for the thing, and we kind of tomorrow restaurant to work. So we other discussion of the one myself first on that. On Friday as well, we can have every Friday usually they're on their party, and I go crazy. There's the, summer on the steps, they're calling it a community, getting, a couple readers from the workshop, will be speaking. And as Maureen mentioned, there's a community home that will be read, and I'm going with that point. If you want to contribute to the community home, there are two ways I know. One is walking by the stage, which is like my hostess. If you're an old timer, you might remember it as like the around us. It's now a nice coins to the community home. If you go to poetry dot, or that will get to the traveling stanzas, which is affiliated with poetry. Yes, we take, and you're up to slow down and play. You do home and then how to connect and then actually taking it to the next conventional. Would be halfway this week was the season. There's a sister art team. The Popular Theater Company does the new play workshop for production of this season. So it's Friday, coming up at our builder studio. Few China next week for the author's hour. We will have Andy Birch with a personal essay, and we will also present some of her chronicle of Open's long haul. Please also consider joining three friends at the Chicago Writers Center to help sponsor events. All the events that I've mentioned so far. Videos of this presentation and in fact of all presentations of the author's hour since that mission here is 2020 from now to you'll be able to find that I posted by this evening. It's a particular link for you, but if you go and search for the strength of the Chicago Writers Center channel, that will get you through our videos. Thank you for being here and braving your week. I hope you see you next week's author's hour or any of the other literary events either sponsored by us or by the CNSC or through